This is the Religious Apocalypse Iceberg Explained. Tier 1, Christian Rapture. It's September 2025, and your TikTok feeds look broken. Half the videos are people crying, saying goodbye, and talking about Jesus coming back. One woman is smiling about losing her job because she prayed to be home for the rapture. Someone else is calmly putting together care packages for people who'll be left behind. That's what a lot of people were doing to prepare for the rapture coming on the 23rd or 24th. You might have thought they were overreacting, or you might have stayed calm simply because you didn't fully understand what they believed was about to happen next. According to certain Christian beliefs, what they were expecting wasn't symbolic or metaphorical. They believed Jesus Christ was about to return and physically remove all true believers from the earth. When it starts, the dead will go first. Every Christian who ever died will rise from their graves, but you won't see wobbling corpses. They get resurrected and perfected versions of themselves. Next, the living believers lift off the ground. There's no choice involved, and no time to say goodbye. You'll just suddenly be airborne, shooting up into the sky to meet Jesus in the clouds. For everyone still on the ground, it's instant confusion. A coworker disappears from their desk mid-sentence. Some churches are suddenly half empty, while others look exactly the same. You turn on the news and every channel is covering the same thing. Mass disappearances happening all over the world. And according to believers, this is only the beginning. What comes next is called the Tribulation, a 7-year period of intense suffering based on interpretations of the Book of Revelation. It's divided into two halves of 3.5 years each, and the second half is significantly worse than the first. It's literally called the Great Tribulation. At the start of the tribulation, the Antichrist emerges as a charismatic political leader who brings peace to the world by negotiating a 7-year covenant with Israel. For the first 3.5 years, things seem relatively stable, which is how he gains power. But halfway through, everything changes. The Antichrist reveals his true nature, breaks the covenant, declares himself God, and demands worship from everyone on earth. Then he establishes a one-world government and requires everyone to take the mark of the beast, the number 666, on their right hand or forehead. Without this mark, you can't buy food, access medical care, or participate in the economy at all. Take the mark and you're damned eternally. Refuse it and you'll probably starve or get executed, but at least you're getting into heaven. While this political nightmare unfolds, God will be passing down judgment on earth in the form of plagues, natural disasters, and cosmic disturbances. According to Revelation, 1/3 of the sea will turn to blood and kill all marine life. 1/3 of fresh water will become poisonous. There will be massive earthquakes, and the sun's heat will intensify so much that it'll burn people's skin. For people left behind after the rapture, survival means choosing between your body and your soul. You can take the mark and guarantee your ability to eat and function in society, but you'll be eternally damned. Or you can refuse the mark, face persecution, and likely execution, but secure your place in heaven. After 7 years, the tribulation finally ends when Jesus returns in the second coming. He'll defeat the Antichrist and his armies at the Battle of Armageddon, and establish a 1,000-year reign of peace on earth. Everyone who survived without taking the mark gets to live in this new kingdom, and everyone who took it gets thrown into the lake of fire. Norse Ragnarök. You step outside for what's supposed to be a normal walk in the middle of the day. Suddenly, the sky goes dark, then snow starts falling and it doesn't stop. It keeps going for 3 years straight. No spring, no summer, just endless winter burying everything under ice. Your crops are dead. Your livestock freeze where they stand. And people who used to be neighbors are now breaking into your home to take whatever scraps you have left. This is Ragnarök, the Norse end of the world, and it's one of the oldest apocalypse prophecies ever told. The name translates roughly to Fate of the Gods, or Twilight of the Gods. According to the prophecy, Ragnarök starts with the death of Baldur, the beloved son of Odin and the most perfect of all the gods. Loki, the trickster god, tricks Baldur's blind brother, Hor, into killing him with a spear made of mistletoe. The gods try to bring Baldur back from the dead, but fail completely, and his death becomes the first domino that tips everything else over. Because if the gods can't save one of their own, what chance does anyone else have? Then comes Fimbulwinter. 3 winters back to back with no summer in between. Just snow falling from every direction, while the cold refuses to let up. People starve as food runs out, and there's no way to grow more. Families turn on each other. Wars break out everywhere. And every moral code people used to live by gets abandoned, because survival becomes the only thing that matters. During this frozen hell, 2 wolves named Hati and Skrull, who've been chasing the sun and moon since the beginning of time, finally catch them and swallow them whole, plunging the world into complete darkness. As crazy as that sounds, it's only the beginning. While humanity is freezing and starving in the dark, the monsters break free. Fenrir, a massive wolf the gods had chained up because they were terrified of him, shatters his bonds and breaks loose. Jormungandr, a serpent so large it wraps around the entire planet, wakes up and thrashes out of the ocean, filling the sky with poison from its venom. Loki, who had been chained in a cave as punishment for causing the death of Baldur, escapes. He then gathers an army of frost giants to march on Asgard, the home of the gods, setting the stage for the final confrontation. That's when the call to war sounds. Heimdall, the watchman of the gods, blows his horn to summon the gods for their final battle, and the sound echoes across all 9 realms. Asgard, where the gods live, Midgard, where humans are trying not to freeze or starve to death, and all the other realms of giants, elves, and the dead. The gods ride out to meet their enemies on a battlefield called Vigrir. Odin fights Fenrir and gets swallowed whole. Thor manages to kill Jormungandr, but only walks 9 steps before collapsing dead from the serpent's poison. Heimdall and Loki kill each other in single combat, and then Surtur, a fire giant, sets the entire world on fire, all 9 realms at once. The flame consumes everything. Stars fall from the sky, the land breaks apart, and the earth sinks into the ocean until it disappears beneath the water. When the fire finally burns out and the floodwaters pull back, a new earth will rise from the sea, green, fertile, and untouched by what came before. A few gods survive the battle. Baldur even returns from the dead, and according to the myth, 2 humans named Lif and Livpresir will somehow make it through by hiding in a place called Hodmimis Holt. They will emerge to repopulate the new world, and a new sun will appear in the sky. Life will begin again, but only after nearly everything was wiped out first. Jewish end of days. You're on the walls of Jerusalem when the horizon starts to darken. At first it looks like a storm rolling in, but it isn't. It's armies. Soldiers keep appearing from every direction, spreading across the land until there's nowhere left to look that isn't filled with them. There's no open ground and no clear path out of the city. Just weapons, banners, and the slow, steady movement of an invasion closing in. This is the War of Gog and Magog, the final battle before the Jewish end of the world. Getting there, however, will take some time. According to the Talmud, a collection of ancient Jewish discussions and interpretations, there's a 7-year countdown to this invasion that reads like society slowly coming apart. The first year will bring unstable rainfall. Some cities will flood while others will dry out completely. In the second year, famine will appear in scattered regions. By the third year, that famine will spread everywhere, killing men, women, children, and even the righteous, and people will abandon their religious teachings altogether. The fourth and fifth year will bring relief, just enough food to survive, nothing more. In the sixth year, strange voices will echo from the heavens, and in the seventh year, the war will begin. When the invasion starts, it'll come from an army led by a figure called Gog from the land of Magog. Nations from across the world will join the attack, moving in on Israel with forces so vast they'll cover the entire land. The armies will steal resources from cities, take captives, and drag people out in chains. Everything the Jewish people built will get torn down. And for a while, it'll feel like this is the end for them, until God decides he's had enough. The prophecy describes God's fury as so intense that the earth itself will respond. Massive earthquakes will shake the mountains of Israel. The invading armies, confused and terrified, will turn on each other in the chaos. Fire and sulfur will rain down from the sky, and the natural disasters will be so catastrophic that it'll take 7 months just to bury all the dead bodies scattered across Israel. When all that is over, the Messiah, a human leader descended from King David, will rebuild the temple in Jerusalem and gather Jewish people scattered around the world back to Israel. But this won't be a magical transformation where everyone suddenly becomes perfect. Life will mostly go on the way it always has, just with better leadership and no more wars. People will still work, still grow old, still die, and still live ordinary lives. Humanity will finally recognize the God of Israel as the one true God. Nations will stop turning on each other, and instead of pouring energy into violence and greed, people will focus on wisdom, justice, and spiritual growth. Tier 2. Zoroastrian Frashokereti. You died 1,000 years ago, and now you're standing again. The ground beneath your feet splits open and fire pours out. It is not a volcano, and it's not anything natural you can recognize. This is molten metal. flowing like a river, and you are standing right at its edge. Everyone who ever lived is there with you, including the people who were still alive when this started, and they're all waiting their turn to walk through it. In Zoroastrian belief, this moment is called Frashokereti. Zoroastrian was founded by the prophet Zoroaster, somewhere between 1700 and 1000 BCE in Iran, making it one of the oldest religions still practiced today. Frashokereti, which translates roughly to making wonderful, is their doctrine of final universal renewal. The basic premise is simple enough. Good will eventually defeat evil, the world will be restored to how it was at creation, and everyone will be resurrected for judgment. According to Zoroastrian texts, history is divided into 4 periods of 3,000 years each, and we're currently in the final period. At the end of this period, Frashokereti will kick off with the arrival of the Saoshyant, a savior figure who will be born from the preserved seed of Zoroaster himself. The seed is believed to have been preserved in Lake Helmand in Seistan, Iran for thousands of years. It's being protected by guardian spirits, waiting for the right virgin to bathe in it and become miraculously pregnant. Upon his arrival, the Saoshyant will perform a ritual that triggers the resurrection of all the dead. Mountains will melt, and their metal ore will liquefy into rivers that flow across the earth. Then, every soul who ever lived will have to walk through this river of molten metal as their final test. For the righteous, the metal will feel like warm milk. It'll be pleasant and comforting. For the wicked, it'll be exactly what you'd expect molten metal to feel like. But the good news is, the burning won't be eternal damnation. Instead, the molten metal will purify the wicked, burning away their sins and evil deeds. After everyone passes through the molten metal, they will emerge cleansed and perfect, and evil will be gone from the universe forever. The Saoshyant will then prepare a sacred drink called Hauma from the white Hauma plant, which everyone will drink, granting immortality. Human bodies will become so light they will cast no shadows. Nobody will need food. Thirst will vanish. Injury will be impossible. And weapons will be obsolete because there will be nothing left to fight. All humanity will speak one language, live as a single nation with no borders, and exist in complete, eternal unity. Hindu Kali Yuga, Age of Darkness. Imagine a world where people marry based purely on looks. Rulers steal from their own citizens. Families fall apart because nobody respects each other anymore. And everyone's stress levels are so high they're lucky to make it a 50. Now stop imagining. Because according to Hindu cosmology, we're already living in it. This is Kali Yuga, the Age of Darkness, and we've barely started. Hindu texts divide time into 4 repeating ages, called Yugas, each one worse than the last. Satya Yuga was the golden age, where everyone lived for thousands of years, and Dharma, which means cosmic order and righteousness, stood at 100%. Treta Yuga dropped Dharma to 75%. Dvapara Yuga brought it down to about 50%. Then came Kali Yuga, the worst of the bunch, where Dharma collapses to 25% and stays there, while everything slowly rots for nearly 500,000 years. Kali Yuga began in 3102 BCE when Lord Krishna, the 8th incarnation of the god Vishnu, died and left Earth. The moment he departed, the connection between humans and the divine weakened, triggering the start of this dark age. As of 2026, we're about 5,128 years into Kali Yuga, with another 426,872 years left to go before it ends. The total duration is 432,000 years, which is equivalent to about 1,200 divine years in Hindu timekeeping, where one divine year equals 360 human years. The prophecies describing Kali Yuga read like a checklist of modern social problems, which either means ancient Hindu sages were incredible fortune tellers, or humans have been terrible at learning from their mistakes for at least 5,000 years. The Bhagavata Purana and other Hindu texts list dozens of specific signs. For starters, religion becomes a tool for hypocrisy rather than genuine spiritual practice. People lose physical strength and mental sharpness. Honesty disappears as lying becomes standard behavior. The rich exploit the poor without shame. Leaders abandon their duty to protect citizens and instead rob them through taxes and corruption. Family bonds dissolve as children disrespect parents and siblings, betray each other. Education focuses on making money rather than wisdom, and adult desire drives relationships instead of partnership and duty. Natural disasters, plagues, and wars escalate as Kali Yuga progresses. But the good news is, it doesn't end in permanent destruction. When things get bad enough, when virtue has nearly vanished and wickedness dominates the world, the god Vishnu will incarnate one final time as Kalki. The prophecy describes Kalki as a warrior riding on a white horse, carrying a sword that blazes like a comet. He will be born in the village of Shambhala to a respected family, and when the time comes, he will strike down the wicked, overthrow corrupt rulers, and restore balance to the world. After Kalki's intervention, the world will enter a catastrophic transition period, involving massive natural disasters that'll essentially cleanse the planet. When the destruction ends, Satya Yuga will begin again. The cycle will start fresh with a new golden age of truth, virtue, and spiritual enlightenment. The Dharma that was 25% during the Kali Yuga will jump back up to 100, and society will get a chance to rebuild from the ground up with a clean slate. Atrahasis Flood. It's a sunny afternoon. Kids run and scream in the streets. Markets are alive with people trading and shouting. And somewhere a wedding band is drumming into the night. Up in the sky, Enlil, the god of earth and sky, has reached his limit. The noise won't stop, so he decides if humans can't quiet down on their own, he'll take care of it himself. This is what led to the Atrahasis Flood, an ancient Mesopotamian apocalypse from the land between the Tigris and Euphrates. People back then believed it had already happened long ago. The problem was simple. Humanity had multiplied for generations, filling cities across the land, and Enlil couldn't take the chaos any longer. To restore order, he came up with a detailed plan to thin out the human population. First, he sent a plague. He dispatched the god Namtar, who controlled disease to spread sickness across the land. The plan worked, and soon people started dying in droves, their bodies piling up in the streets. But Enki, the god of water and wisdom, who'd always had a soft spot for humans, taught a man named Atrahasis how to survive. Atrahasis prayed specifically to Namtar, offered sacrifices, and the plague was eventually lifted. Enlil tried again. This time he caused a drought. The rain stopped completely. Crops withered in the fields and the rivers dried up. People began to starve, and for 6 years the famine got progressively worse. When the 6th year arrived, families were eating their own children just to survive. Once again, Enki intervened by releasing massive quantities of fish into the waters. At this point, Enlil became furious. Every time he tried to reduce the human population, Enki found a way to save them. So he made a final decision. He was going to flood the entire world and kill everyone. This time, he made Enki swear an oath not to interfere. And Enki agreed. But Enki was clever. He didn't break his oath by warning Atrahasis directly. Instead, he spoke to a wall, knowing Atrahasis was on the other side listening. Atrahasis got the message and built a boat. He loaded it with his family, animals, food, and craftspeople, then sealed the door with a tar-like substance that made the boat watertight. When the storm began, it was worse than anyone imagined. The storm was deafening, and the darkness was so thick the sun completely disappeared. People couldn't see each other in the chaos. They drowned alone, unable to even recognize their own families around them. The flood was so violent that even the gods were terrified. They huddled together in fear, realizing they'd made a terrible mistake. Then another problem emerged. They started to go hungry because there were no humans left to bring them offerings. After 7 days and nights, the flood subsided. Atrahasis' boat came to rest on a mountain, and he stepped out onto a world that had been completely wiped clean. He immediately offered a sacrifice to the gods. The hungry gods smelled the fragrance and gathered like flies over the offering. Enlil was furious when he saw that Atrahasis had survived, but the other gods were relieved that someone was alive to feed them. After some in-house squabbling, the gods came to an agreement. They wouldn't destroy humanity again, but they needed a better way to control the population. So they invented infant mortality and difficult childbirth to slow things down. They also made some women celibate priestesses who would never have children, all to make sure humanity never grew loud enough to bother them again. Tier 3. Hopi Blue Star Prophecy. Imagine you're at a ceremonial dance with the Hopi, a Native American tribe in Arizona, when a kachina dancer, wearing an elaborate mask, walks to the center of the plaza. In front of everyone, including children who aren't supposed to witness this sort of thing, he reaches up and removes his mask. The crowd goes completely silent. You don't know what you just saw, but based on the looks on everyone's faces, something terrible just happened. The Hopi are a Native American tribe who've lived in northeastern Arizona for over 1,000 years. They're known as the Peaceful Ones, because they somehow managed to survive in the desert without resorting to warfare. According to their beliefs, there are 4 worlds. Humanity has already lived through 3 of them, and we're currently in the 4th one. Each previous world was destroyed because people became corrupt and stopped living in harmony with nature. That's where the Blue Star Kachina comes in. According to the prophecy, this spiritual being will first reveal itself at ceremonial dances by removing its mask in front of everyone. After that, the blue star will physically manifest in the sky as an actual blue star visible to everyone on Earth. When that happens, a period of intense purification will begin. The red star Kachina, also called the Purifier, will arrive shortly to destroy civilization. When that happens, the sky will turn blood red. Terrifying beings are said to walk the Earth, and most life on the surface will be wiped out. After the destruction, a figure called the True White Brother, or Pana, will show up to judge all who survive. His job is to search for Hopi people who have remained faithful to traditional teachings, like prayer, ceremonies, and respecting the land. If he finds enough pure-hearted individuals, they'll be allowed to populate the new fifth world. If he doesn't find any, he'll finish the job and destroy the Earth completely. But here's the thing about this prophecy. Researchers tried to trace it back through Hopi history, and they hit a brick wall. Jason Colavito, a respected author, investigated extensively and couldn't find any reference to the Blue Star Kachina before 1963, when an American writer named Frank Waters published The Book of the Hopi. Waters claimed the prophecy came directly from Hopi elders, but the earliest actual mention came from a Methodist pastor named David Young, not from ancient Hopi sources. Also, an anthropologist, Armin Geertz, found evidence that the Hopi have continuously recreated their prophecies after events already happened to make it look like they predicted them. What remains is a prophecy that sounds ancient, but lacks clear evidence of existing before the modern era. Despite having no verifiable sources before the 1960s, the Blue Star Kachina remains one of the most widely circulated apocalyptic prophecies today. Hopi elders have distanced themselves from it, but that hasn't stopped believers from scanning the skies for blue stars. Maitreya's arrival. A monk walks through the marketplace of what used to be a bustling city. He's the only one in robes. The others from his monastery are gone. Some returned to their families. Others vanished in the night with whatever they could grab. The few who remain in town don't even acknowledge him. Like being a monk has become something to be ashamed of. In Buddhist teaching, the world goes through cycles, and each cycle eventually ends in destruction before starting fresh again. In most cases, what triggers the end isn't some external force, it's human behavior. According to the prophecy, as people become more greedy, violent, and selfish, the universe itself responds by shortening human lifespans. It's not a punishment exactly, more like a natural consequence. The more corrupt society becomes, the less time people have to live. This creates a feedback loop, where shorter lives lead to worse behavior, which leads to even shorter lives. People who once lived for hundreds of years will die at 70, then 50, then 30. Eventually, humans will only live for 10 years, reaching full adulthood as children and dying before they accumulate any wisdom or learn compassion. As lifespans shrink, so too will morality. Human decency and social bonds will crumble. Parents will abandon their children, and children will kill their parents for survival. Monks will cast off their robes, returning to lives of greed and violence. But his teachings will be forgotten, and anyone who tries to act with compassion will be seen as weak and foolish. The violence will eventually escalate into what Buddhist texts call Sathantara Kappa, which means the sword interval. During this period, humans will see each other as prey animals to be hunted. They'll pick up anything they can find as weapons, sticks and stones and shards of metal, and use them to slaughter everyone they encounter. The streets will run red as people kill without thinking, driven by rage they can't even explain. This mass violence will wipe out most of humanity in a matter of days. After the mass slaughter ends, the few survivors of the sword interval will hide in forests and mountains, terrified and traumatized. When they finally emerge and see the scale of death around them, they'll realize what they've done, what they've become, and the horror of it will break through their madness. These survivors will start practicing basic kindness again, and slowly, painfully, human lifespans will begin to increase as morality returns. Before humanity can fully recover, the world itself will begin to die. Massive droughts will sweep across the land. Rivers vanish. Crops fail year after year. And the few communities that remain watch their children starve. Famine will claim most of those who survived the previous waves of destruction, leaving only a handful barely clinging to life. It is then that the Maitreya, the enlightened teacher foretold to appear in humanity's darkest hour, will arrive. He won't come to save the world as it is. He appears only after destruction has run its course, when nearly all humans are gone and the earth lies scorched and empty. He will find the few survivors hiding in caves and ruins, struggling to remember what civilization once looked like. Only then will he begin teaching, guiding them to rebuild their societies and restore their understanding of compassion and truth. Manichaean Apocalypse. A Manichaean priest stands in a temple in ancient Persia, watching particles of dust move through a beam of sunlight. To him, those floating dust particles are fragments of divine light trapped in evil matter and waiting to be freed. He spent decades fasting, praying, and living in poverty to help liberate those particles. But he knows this battle between light and darkness can't go on forever. One side will eventually win, and when it does, the entire material world will burn for over 1,000 years. This is the Manichaean Apocalypse, a prophecy from a religion founded by the prophet Mani in 3rd century Persia that blended Christian, Zoroastrian, and Buddhist ideas into something completely unique. At the heart of Manichaeism sits a simple but terrifying idea. The universe is a battlefield between two equal forces: light, which is pure goodness, and darkness, which is pure evil. According to Manichaean teaching, the material world we live in exists because darkness attacked the realm of light ages ago and captured pieces of it. Our physical bodies, the earth, and everything material are evil darkness mixed with trapped fragments of good light. The end will begin when the last light particles get freed from matter. This happens gradually over centuries, as the elect Manichaean priests who live extremely strict lives free light through spiritual practice and by avoiding anything that traps more light and matter. They avoid meat, marriage, children, and almost all physical pleasure, dedicating their lives to prayer and discipline. Every time one of them dies, the light in their body escapes back into the realm of light. Slowly, grain by grain, the light is being extracted. When most of the light has been freed, the final battle will begin. Divine beings and angels from the realm of light will fight against demons and evil powers who want to keep the remaining light particles trapped. Manichaean texts describe this as a real physical battle, not just a spiritual metaphor. When the light beings win that battle, the real nightmare begins for anyone still living in the material world. The material world will start burning, and it'll be a slow, grinding burn that lasts exactly 1,468 years. But the purpose isn't punishment, it's purification. The fire will consume matter to force out any remaining light particles still trapped inside. For people living through this, it means over 1,000 years of watching the world slowly fall apart around them. Cities will crumble, forests will turn to ash, oceans will boil away, and anyone who isn't pure light, meaning basically everyone except the most devoted elect, will burn along with it. The elect, having freed themselves from matter through their strict practices, will have their light particles released to return to the realm of light. During this burning period, something called the New Paradise will form temporarily in the sky to collect the freed light particles. It's described as a kind of staging area where light gathers before returning to its original realm. Once every single particle of light has been extracted and returned home, the New Paradise dissolves and the material world finishes collapsing. Then comes the final separation. All the light returns permanently to the realm of light where it belongs, and all the darkness gets sealed into an eternal prison, locked away forever so it can never attack the light again. The war is over. Good and evil are completely divorced from each other and will never mix again. Tier 4. Yawm al-Qiyāmah. You're going about your day when suddenly a trumpet blasts so loud it echoes across the entire universe and rings through the sky. Before you can process what's happening, everything goes dark. Everyone around you drops dead instantly, including you. Then, at some point later, whether it's days or centuries or even more, another trumpet sounds, and you wake up standing in a crowd so massive you can't see the end of it. Every person who ever lived is here, and everyone's waiting for the same thing. This is Yawm al-Qiyāmah, the Day of Judgment in Islamic belief, and it's the final reckoning for all of humanity. The idea of this day has been part of Islamic hadiths from the beginning. And according to these records, Judgment Day is coming. It's inevitable, and nobody except Allah knows when it'll happen. The day itself will be preceded by major signs that signal the end is near. The Dajjal, a false messiah figure, will appear and deceive humanity. Isa, who Christians know as Jesus, will return to Earth to defeat him. Ya'juj and Ma'juj, two destructive tribes locked away since ancient times, will break free and wreak havoc on Earth. And in what's apparently the universe's way of saying time's up, the sun will rise from the west instead of the east. Once those signs have all occurred, Yawm al-Qiyāmah will begin with the angel Israfil blowing a trumpet. The first blast will kill every living thing in existence, from humans to animals to angels. Everything except Allah and the universe will essentially pause while everything is dead. Then, Israfil will be resurrected by Allah to blow the trumpet a second time, bringing everyone else back to life for judgment. It won't matter what state your body is in when you die. Your body will be reassembled from whatever's left of it, even if you were cremated, eaten by animals, or dissolved in the ocean. According to Islamic teaching, there's a tiny bone at the base of the spine called the tailbone that's indestructible, and Allah will use that as the foundation to rebuild your entire body from scratch. Once everyone's back, all of humanity will be gathered on a massive plain. The sun will be brought extremely close to Earth, and people will be drowning in their own sweat based on how sinful they were. The righteous will barely sweat, while the wicked will be submerged up to their necks. This waiting period will last for 50,000 years, according to how humans measure time, though it'll feel shorter for some people and significantly longer for others depending on their deeds. Then comes the actual judgment. Each person will be brought before Allah individually and handed a book containing the complete record of their life. Every action, every word, every thought. Get the book in your right hand and you'll be going to Jannah, which is paradise. Get it in your left hand or behind your back and you'll be going to Jahannam, which is hell. No questions asked. After judgment, there'll be one final test. A bridge called As-Sirat that stretches over Jahannam and leads to Jannah. It's described as thinner than a hair and sharper than a sword. The righteous will cross it easily, while sinners will slip and fall into the fire below. Some will cross it as fast as lightning. Others will crawl, and many won't make it at all. Paradise will be eternal gardens with rivers and fruits and everything you could want. Hell will be eternal fire where the torment never ends, and you can't die to escape it. Rastafari Apocalypse. A dreadlocked elder stands on a hillside in Kingston, Jamaica, staring at the horizon as the sky turns an unnatural shade of red. He's been preaching about this day for decades, warning anyone who would listen that Babylon's time was running out. Now the ground beneath his feet begins to shake, and he realizes the prophecy he spent his life proclaiming might have been more real than he ever imagined. This is the Rastafari Apocalypse, and according to their beliefs, the world will end when Babylon finally falls. The whole prophecy centers on Babylon, but not the ancient city. In Rastafari belief, Babylon represents the entire corrupt system of Western oppression that's been enslaving humanity for centuries. It's the governments, the banks, the police forces, and the colonial powers that divided up Africa and scattered its people across the world. When Judgment Day comes, all of it has to burn. The apocalypse will start with natural disasters that target the heart of Babylon's power. Earthquakes will level financial districts in major Western cities. The ground will open up beneath stock exchanges and government buildings, swallowing them whole. Floods will wash through the streets of old colonial capitals, drowning statues built to celebrate invasion and stolen land. Fires will break out in military bases and spread uncontrollably. The earth itself will rise up against the wickedness that's been poisoned into it. For the people living in these cities, the destruction will hit them before they realize what's happening. One moment you're on your way to work, the next, the subway tunnel collapses and traps you underground in total darkness. Office buildings that seemed solid and impermanent will crack down the middle and fold in on themselves. Highways will buckle and send cars tumbling into the ocean. The physical destruction will be just the beginning of the problem. When the systems holding everything together collapse, basic survival will become impossible almost immediately. Without clean food or clean water, people will start dying on the streets. The military will try to maintain order but end up fighting itself as different factions turn on each other in the chaos. Even the faithful Rastafari won't be protected from what's happening. They've spent years preparing for this moment, believing their righteousness will shield them when Babylon falls. But the earthquakes won't avoid the communities where they gather to praise Jah, their vision of God. They'll suffer the same as everyone else as the world tears itself apart. When the destruction reaches its peak, Haile Selassie I will appear to judge what's left of humanity. The Rastafari honor him as the returned Messiah and expect justice when he comes. But he won't rejoice at Babylon's fall. He'll see the ruins with sorrow. The system had to be destroyed, but millions of innocent lives will be lost. People born into an unjust world who never had a choice. Incan Pachacuti. A farmer in the Andes Mountains of South America wakes up to find cracks spreading across the ground that weren't there yesterday. In the distance, he watches an entire hillside collapse and reform into something new. Meanwhile, his neighbors are pointing at the sky where the sun and moon are both visible at the same time in positions they shouldn't be. This is Pachacuti, the Incan concept of world transformation. It comes from the Inca civilization, a powerful Andean society that ruled much of western South America before the Spanish arrived, and it marks the violent end of one age and the chaotic birth of another. In Incan beliefs, time moves in cycles, and each cycle eventually reaches a breaking point called Pachacuti, which translates to overturning of time and space, or world transformation. According to this belief, when a world age ends, reality itself will undergo a massive shift where the old systems get destroyed to make way for something completely new. The transformation begins when nature itself turns against humanity. Earthquakes tear open the ground, swallowing villages whole. Mountains crumble and reform overnight. Rivers no longer follow the patterns people have relied on for generations, flooding one valley while drying up another. Even the sun and moon betray expectations, appearing in the wrong places, or both hanging in the sky at once, throwing calendars into chaos and leaving farmers and towns alike scrambling to survive. For ordinary people, the chaos in the sky and on Earth will make survival impossible almost immediately. Crops will fail when the seasons become unreliable. Families will watch their children starve as famine spreads, and the carefully organized societies with their complex systems and agricultural planning will fall apart. The social order will also collapse alongside the physical one. Leaders who are considered divine figures and mediators between the gods and humanity will lose authority when people realize they can't stop what's happening. The priests will perform ceremonies and make sacrifices, but the gods won't respond. When the destruction finally stops, a new world age will begin. The landscape will be completely rearranged, and survivors will find themselves in an environment that barely resembles what they knew. The old social hierarchies will be gone, and the knowledge and tradition of the previous age will be lost. The few people who make it through will have to rebuild civilization from scratch, creating new ways of living in a transformed world. Tier 5. Shambhala War. You're sitting in meditation at a monastery high in the Himalayas, the massive mountain range that stretches across Asia. All of a sudden, the ground starts to shake, but it's not an earthquake. Something is moving beneath the mountains. The monks around you look terrified. One of them grabs your arm and points toward a valley that was not there yesterday. There's fear in his eyes as he says Shambhala has opened its gates. And that's when you realize all hell is about to break loose. Shambhala is a legendary Buddhist kingdom supposedly hidden somewhere in the Himalayas or Central Asia, invisible to the outside world. For centuries, Buddhist texts described it as a paradise where the purest form of Buddhism is preserved. According to the Kalachakra Tantra, one of the most important texts in Tibetan Buddhism, introduced in the 11th century, this hidden kingdom is preparing for war. The prophecy says that around the year 2424 CE, humanity will have fallen into complete spiritual decay. People will abandon Buddhism and other spiritual practices. Wars will be constant, and a specific religion will spread across the world. The texts explicitly identify the enemy as Muslims, directly naming Muhammad, the founder of Islam, and Allah as leaders of the opposing forces. The choice of enemy isn't random when you place it in historical context. Buddhism encountered Islam in eastern Afghanistan and northern India around 600 to 800 CE. As Islam expanded through military conquest, Muslim armies forced Buddhist communities to convert, leave, or face persecution. Monasteries were destroyed, monks were driven out or killed, and centuries of Buddhist presence in these areas were wiped out. The Shambhala prophecy emerged a few centuries later as what many scholars believe is a response to this historical trauma. According to the prophecy, the 25th king of Shambhala, named Ruda Chakran, will emerge leading a massive army. He'll gather forces from multiple nations, including millions of war elephants and thousands of cavalry, to march against the Islamic world. The battle will take place across the same regions where Buddhism was violently displaced, from Afghanistan through Iran to Turkey. For people living through this war, it means total global conflict. Cities get destroyed, populations get wiped out, and the fighting continues until one side is completely eliminated. The prophecy describes actual warfare with soldiers, weapons, and massive bloodshed until the Muslim forces are destroyed. After Shambhala's army wins, the world will enter a new golden age. Buddhism will become the dominant spiritual practice, and humanity will live in peace and enlightenment for thousands of years. The survivors will rebuild civilization under Buddhist principles. and Shambhala will reveal itself fully, with its teachings spreading across the planet. The prophecy puts this war roughly 400 years into the future, and according to the timeline, we're in the build-up phase where spiritual decay is spreading. For believers, the signs are already appearing through warfare, materialism, and the decline of spiritual practice. When Shambhala finally opens its gates and the armies march out, it'll mean the world has reached the breaking point. Sermon of the Seven Suns. Imagine looking up at the sky one day and seeing not one sun, but two, then three, then more. Each new sun makes the earth hotter until the entire planet becomes one massive fireball. This is the Sermon of the Seven Suns, a prophecy delivered by Buddha himself about how the world will eventually end. The sermon comes from Satsuriya Sutta, an ancient Buddhist text that's part of the Pali Canon, a collection of scriptures written in Pali, an old Indian language. The Buddha supposedly delivered this sermon to his monks to teach them about the impermanent nature of existence. Nothing lasts forever, not even the earth itself. According to the Buddha, after an unimaginably long period of time, the sun we see now will grow hotter and stop rain from falling completely. No rain means no crops, so all vegetation will die. Every living thing on Earth, humans and animals alike, will starve to death and disappear. Soon, the planet will become a lifeless rock. Then, the second sun will appear, and the oceans will start evaporating. Rivers will dry up, and whatever water survived the first drought will boil away into steam. By the time the third and fourth suns arrived, oceans that once measured hundreds of feet deep will be reduced to shallow, knee-deep puddles, and the fifth sun will finish the job by reducing what's left to ankle-deep water. The sixth sun is when things will get truly catastrophic. The earth and all its mountains will start smoking. The ground will heat up like a potter's oven, and everything will reek of burning rock. Mount Sindaru, which in Buddhist cosmology is the mountain at the center of the universe, will start sending up massive clouds of smoke. According to the sermon, even the heavens won't be spared. A single spark will rise upward, and the celestial realms themselves will burn and disappear. The only ones excluded are described as those who have seen the path, meaning people who reached enlightenment and are no longer bound to the world when it ends. Aztec Fifth Sun. A priest drags a man up by the temple steps before a silent crowd, and he doesn't resist. He's been chosen, and in Aztec society, that makes him an offering, which is considered an honor. At the top, 4 priests hold him down, while the 5th opens his chest with an obsidian blade and lifts his still-beating heart toward the sun as blood runs down the pyramid steps. This isn't rare or symbolic. It happens every day, sometimes dozens of times. And according to the Aztecs, the moment it stops, the universe itself begins to break. This is the Aztec Fifth Sun prophecy, and the catastrophic collapse the priests warned about was believed to have already happened before. Their certainty came from how they understood creation itself. In Aztec belief, the universe moved through repeating cycles called suns. Each sun was basically a complete version of the world ruled by different gods. According to their mythology, the gods had tried creating the world 4 times before, and each attempt ended in disaster. During the first sun, jaguars roamed the earth and eventually wiped out the giant humans who lived there. When that world collapsed, the second sun followed, and this time it ended in chaos, with massive hurricanes tearing everything apart and transforming people into monkeys. The third sun didn't last either. Volcanic fire rained down from the sky and burned the world out completely. And then came the fourth sun, which ended slowly and miserably, as the entire world flooded and stayed underwater for 52 straight years. After 4 failed attempts, the gods gathered at Teotihuacan, a sacred place near modern-day Mexico City, to try again. 2 gods, Nanahuatzin and Tecusis Tecatl, threw themselves into a massive bonfire to become the sun and moon respectively. But the new sun wouldn't move. It just sat there in the sky, motionless. The other gods had to sacrifice themselves and give their blood to set the sun in motion. That's when they realized the sun needed blood to keep moving, and without it, the world would end in darkness. With that lesson learned, the fifth sun began. It started around 1011 CE, according to the Aztec calendar. It was ruled by Tonatiuh, the sun god, and the prophecy said this version of the world would eventually end through massive earthquakes. The Aztecs couldn't prevent the earthquakes, but they believed if they stopped feeding the sun blood, it would die before the earthquakes even came and plunge everything into permanent darkness. So they built their entire society around keeping the sun alive. They constructed massive pyramids specifically for public sacrifices. Priests would drag victims up temple steps, cut their chests open with obsidian knives, rip out their beating hearts, and hold them up to the sun while blood ran down the steps. This went on for years, and estimates suggest the Aztecs sacrificed somewhere between 20,000 to 80,000 people every year. For regular people in the empire, this meant living in constant fear. You knew the world was ending eventually through earthquakes, and you knew human sacrifice was the only thing keeping the sun moving until then. During droughts or eclipses, priests might show up demanding you hand over your own children because the sun needed extra feeding. The earthquakes the Aztecs have been dreading finally came, just not the kind they expected. In 1519, Spanish invaders led by Hernán Cortés arrived from Europe looking for gold and new territories to claim for Spain. By 1521, they'd conquered Tenochtitlan with a combination of superior weapons, alliances with other indigenous groups who hated the Aztecs, and diseases like smallpox that devastated the population. The Spanish destroyed the temples, banned the religion, stopped the sacrifices, and rebuilt their capital as Mexico City. The Aztecs who survived saw this as the prophecy coming true. Their world had ended, just not by earthquakes. Within 2 years, one of the most powerful empires in the Americas was gone. Cities destroyed, temples demolished, way of life erased. So there you have it. Humanity has spent thousands of years coming up with increasingly creative ways of how the world might end. Some involve divine judgment and sorting the righteous from the damned. Others feature cosmic battles between gods and monsters. The world hasn't ended yet, obviously, but if any of these prophecies turn out to be right, at least we'll finally know which religion called it. If you made it this far through layers of end times chaos, hit that like button and subscribe for more icebergs like this.